Hello, hello. Welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen. If you're watching on video, trying yet another way to get it on YouTube on video. I like to sit on the floor when I'm on my podcast, and most of the time I don't have any makeup on, so I did put on makeup, but I probably will never be fancy when I'm on a podcast. I'll be wearing my t-shirts and sweatshirts and whatever I have on that day, because I want it to feel more like you just came over to my house. I didn't prepare anything fancy. You're sitting on my couch. We're talking together. So hopefully that's okay with you. But the topic for today is the effect that having ADHD could have on your children. If you're a mom and you have ADHD, what effect can that have on your children? And this is actually a topic that was requested from someone who listened to me on YouTube. Because right now, up until now, it's a video of Inspiring Women with ADHD podcast art while you listen, which a lot of podcasts are. But I'm trying to make a video too. We'll see if that works. So how does you having ADHD affect your kids? And there's a likelihood, it's common for moms who have ADHD to have one or more children with ADHD. So I'll talk about both today. And there have been studies done on this. When I looked at the studies, I have a skeptical mind. I don't know if you do. I did read that this is common with women with ADHD, maybe a lot of people with ADHD, is to get stuck on an idea and to kind of stop considering what the person's talking about, not trust the comment, the meme, the quote on Instagram or whatever. I do this a lot where I'll think, yes, but, and then I won't listen to the rest because I start to wonder about a part of it that's stuck in my mind. So something that I wondered with this is, how many people did they study? They studied some people, but were there very many? These were studies of about 80 parent and child combos, and they did studies in the UK and Washington, D.C., and they did the studies on children. If the children had ADHD, if the studies involved children with ADHD, the children were unmedicated for 1 to 2 days so that they could see what their ADHD was like without medication. So that is that. I'm just making sure I have all this. Okay. I put in an Ethernet cable and it just kind of blinked. The video blinked, which usually means the stream isn't steady, but I put in an Ethernet cable. I bought a really long cable and brought it upstairs from downstairs from where I teach yoga. But back to this. Okay. So there's an increased risk of ADHD in children if the mom has ADHD. But usually what's happening is children are diagnosed with ADHD often before a parent is. Many adults, especially women, aren't diagnosed as children. And so often what's happening now, because they are finding that this is so hereditary, and there are so many women who are undiagnosed, that when a child has ADHD, then they want to test the parent and find out if one of the parents has ADHD too. If they want, obviously it's up to them. But so research indicates that mothers with ADHD symptoms are at a slightly higher risk, 24 times more likely, of having children with ADHD. So if you have ADHD symptoms or are diagnosed with ADHD, I mean, this is saying just even having the symptoms, because you have to have a certain number of symptoms to be diagnosed with ADHD or have those symptoms throughout your life, but 24 times more likely to have children with ADHD. It said approximately 17% of mothers of children diagnosed with ADHD also met the criteria for having ADHD when they were children. So just to make that easier to understand if you're driving your car and you're not reading it. I have a harder time understanding things when I'm not reading it, when I'm just listening, because I have to have it make sense visually. So if a child has ADHD, about 17% of mothers can look back at their childhood and see that they had enough symptoms as children to be diagnosed with ADHD too, which is interesting that they put it that way, and instead of saying that they have ADHD now, because when you are diagnosed, you need to show that you had symptoms when you were a child. But my two boys, that one is diagnosed with ADHD, one doesn't think he has ADHD, but he definitely met their criteria as a child. I just didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing as a mom, but I didn't know it was related to ADHD at all. But he definitely met the criteria as a child. As an adult, if I were to diagnose him, which I know I'm not qualified, but if I were to diagnose him, many of the symptoms he had as a child, the impulsivity and the hyperactive components, are different. They play out differently for him as an adult. He doesn't have impulse control problems. He outgrew that quite a bit by the time he was a teenager, which gave me hope for my youngest son, because I thought, oh, he is so much like my oldest son. I have 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. He's so much like my oldest son that maybe he'll grow out of it in high school too, which for the most part he did. So that's interesting. But his hyperactiveness plays out in different ways. Like, now that I look at me as a child and me as an adult, and how my hyperactive components are, it's just the restlessness of not wanting to do something, where I have to be still, where I feel trapped, where I don't feel in control, where my mind's not busy. That still plays out for him as an adult. But back to the effects that ADHD as a mom could have on a child. So this isn't saying it's for everyone, but on the parent-children studies that they did, they found that parents with ADHD tend to be more permissive and more overreactive. You can think what you want about that. I'm thinking what I want about it. I am thinking that if you have ADHD and you're not able to keep track of everything as much as maybe somebody who has executive function in a way that, could work better, maybe those parents could be more consistent. And maybe when you have ADHD, the more permissive might be, that's not working, let's just give up on that method, let's just do this, just kind of switching gears more, being more flexible. And, who knows? Some parents with ADHD could be more strict. But if you are a parent with ADHD and know what it's like to have a hard time being quiet when it's time to be quiet, or not blurting out when you shouldn't blurt out, or sitting still when you need to sit still, or not paying attention when you should pay attention, if you can relate to all those things, I can see someone who's studying me watching and thinking, oh, they should be controlling their child. Like, they shouldn't be letting him do that. They shouldn't let him run up and down the halls. Well, maybe he needs to run up and down the hall so he can sit still a little bit, when class starts or whatever. So, like I said, I look at a lot of things skeptically, but what I want to do on this podcast more than anything is present studies, present information, not to tell you this is how it is for you 100%, but to have you look at the information that's out there, understand how ADHD could impact your life, how it could be impacting your children or your ability to function during the day, and look at it and see what information could I take and find useful. What am I going to discover about myself in this so that I can go forward and do well in life? Anything that feels like it's slipping up, anything that's not going well, anything that is frustrating, and there must be an answer for it. All of these little things can help you put the pieces together, and understanding your own ways and how it could affect your child, or understanding if they have ADHD and what they are capable of and what they're not. Because even though I did have ADHD and didn't know it, my expectations for, keeping your room clean or getting ready on time. I told you we were going to leave in 10 minutes. Why? It's been more than 10 minutes. You said you'd be on in 10 minutes. Time blindness. When you start to understand more of these things, in yourself that are similar to your children, but you don't even realize you have it yet because you don't know that much about it. But anyway, so look at these studies with that and see, am I more permissive? Or am I just perceived as more permissive? Do I react? Am I overreactive? Or am I just fine? So just look at these things. I'm just giving you the studies. I'm apologetically giving you the studies. So so parents with ADHD might be less consistent, less involved. I think that depends. There are a lot of high-functioning parents with ADHD who have so many ideas and want to be in charge of the school rummage sale or the book fair or whatever. You take on responsibilities because you love thinking and doing and planning and stuff, and you might need some help to make sure it all gets done. But you might be good at planning. Some parents with ADHD have a hard time planning. But if you are someone who has a lot of ideas, who's super creative, you might enjoy the planning, because often when you have ADHD and you're very expressive and you like to be in charge of things. And so maybe you might not be as organized about it as someone else, or show up in the same structured way as someone else, but you might plan it your way and it might go just fine. So this is looking at the studies in defense of ADHD moms. So this is interesting. They said in the studies that when the moms were on medication, when they were on stimulants, they found that despite having reduced symptoms in ADHD, their parenting was pretty much the same. It would be really interesting to do a poll. Maybe I'll do that because I have this quiz app ability on my website, which, I made the ADHD test for women with all the symptoms and stuff that they use just for fun. But it would be interesting to make some quizzes, some polls like this to see when you're on your medication, is your parenting different? Is your interaction with your children different? I would think it would be. I would totally think it would be, but, in the studies, they weren't. So also, studies have shown that ADHD in mothers is associated with, I don't know, I feel like all these are negatives. I'm not even going to read that one. Challenges in parenting and family dynamics. Who says? When I wrote this up, when I was writing all the structure for this podcast, I wasn't so combative with all the ideas. But when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, I don't know. I think a lot of women with ADHD are really good moms and have really good social skills with children and relatives and everything. So I don't know. I don't think it brings challenges. I don't know. Especially if you are tuned in, you're a more sensitive person, you're more aware of people and you bring people together in your family. I don't know. Okay, here's another one. Okay, I agree with this. Mothers with ADHD symptoms may struggle with structured routines, and it may potentially lead to a less organized home environment. That may be true. There are a lot of women with ADHD who have their, as my mom would say, home running like clockwork. They have their little system and they do it and they stick to it. Some, not so much. Some just feel like a bomb went off every day and they're trying to do what they can to find things. For me, it's a little mix. I'm very affected by clutter. So I don't, like this room hardly has anything in it, but this is a room that my daughter used to live in and my son stays in when he comes home. And people do when they come visit. So I podcast in here. But for the most part, I like my house to be as clear and clean and decluttered as possible. But there are always pockets. There are always pockets of less organized paperwork, closets with stashed and things like that. So it is hard to be consistent with things like that. Okay, this could impair family functioning for sure, is if you're late, if you can't find all the things that could get you out of the house on time. Where are your shoes? Oh, we haven't done laundry. I don't know where any socks are. If your children are still going to school, where are those papers? Are they in your backpack? Or, or I'm laughing because of all the memories coming back. Or you get your kids to school, but then you get home and realize that you didn't, put lunches in their backpack or even make lunches, and you have to drive them to the school later, or you miss deadlines. They come home and say, we were supposed to have the field trip forms in today. And you think, what field trip form? I don't think your teacher sent it home. And 4 months later, you find it when you're going through your paperwork. So there are all of those things. And I mentioned a few episodes ago about the characters in TV shows and movies that are based on people with ADHD. And Frankie Heck on The Middle is so fabulous with this. I love her so much because it is me, 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 me. Also, dropping things, breaking things, spilling things, injuries, tripping. Do you ever trip over your children? If you have ADHD and you run into things, my theory is that you're just trying to clear it with your eyeballs and you're not aware of anything else. And sometimes you're not even aware of that. You might poke into something with the eye. But yeah, children are down here sometimes if they're really short. And there have been times when I'm in a hurry or I'm walking, I just like an impulse. You combine the impulse and then the tripping part and the not aware of your surroundings. And you turn and you walk, and a child, they can be impulsive too. They run in front of you or they're right in front of you, you don't realize it. And that can knock them over. So yeah, that can interfere with children if not only they aren't careful, but you aren't careful. Okay. Emotional regulation. So that is controlling your emotions. If you have children with ADHD, that can be more challenging as a mom to manage them. But if you have ADHD too, so even if they don't, they could be in their toddler stage or something where, things just don't make sense emotionally, even as with adult children. So if your kids have negative emotions and you have ADHD, you may have emotional dysregulation where you absorb, some people say I absorb energy. I feel like I absorb people's emotions. I'm very, very, very empathetic, sympathetic, whatever. Like if I can't empathize, then I'm sympathizing. I'm watching a football game. What would it must be like for them to fall and get hurt? Anything that I watch, I'm always, like a World War II movie. Oh my goodness. I'm always putting myself in that person's shoes, even if it's a pretend show. And if you're interacting with your children and they've got their emotions which affect you, but then you're torn by their emotion, you know what I'm saying? It can be a lot. Might be harder for you to manage that because you may not have that ability to tone down an emotion that comes into your mind. So if you have anger issues, maybe you get angry easier than other people do. That might be your form of emotional dysregulation. Often this is just me totally, guessing, but I tend to see that more in men than in moms. But if that's a challenge for you, when I was growing up, it was just, what do we used to call it? When somebody had anger issues, they had a bad temper. That was my dad. He had a bad temper. And he had emotional dysregulation with anger. I found that he could totally control it. Children can even do this sometimes. If there was a plan involved. And one time, my youngest son, who now I know he has ADHD, he was impulsive. He got into things and he wasn't good at listening to directions, which doesn't sound like a good child. But he was a really good child. But he always had his own mind. He always had his own ideas. And if someone told him to stop doing something, he usually still had his own plan. So he would rather debate it, talk about it, explore the idea, or just keep going than just do what they said. Well, my dad was more of the era of, if I tell you to do something, you do that. That's what you do. You respect your parents and you do exactly what they say to do. And so when the son was there, if that didn't happen, he'd get angry or whatever. And so I knew that, and he wasn't doing it that often because usually, I was always there when he was there, but I knew that he wasn't patient with kids not obeying. This son was my last child, 1 out of 6. So there was a trip I was taking with my older kids, and I wanted my youngest son to stay with my parents for, I don't know, like 5 days. But I was really worried that my dad would yell at my son the whole time. So I said to my dad, and my dad was old enough, he had a pretty controlled home. It was just him and my mom. I figured he could do it. I wouldn't have left my son there if I was worried too much, but I said to him, if you can go the whole week without yelling, because I knew that he didn't like yelling either. If you can go the whole week without yelling, I'll bring you back 10 loaves of this bread from this bakery that he loved. And he did it. Isn't that funny? It's like we're not only managing our children's emotions, but our parents. But yeah, so you might have difficulties in responding to emotions. It might be anger. It might be tears. It might be just absorbing it and then feeling really worn down. I have a daughter I mentioned before. She has RSD, the rejection sensitive dysphoria, and she would come home every day and tell me all the negative things. So what she eventually told me was that if she didn't do that, they were still with her. So she would come home, come in the kitchen, tell me all the horrible things and every bad person, everything that, not what was bad about them, all the things that they didn't like about her. Kind of thing. I don't know, just all the negative things. And then she'd go into her room and she'd be happy for the rest of the day. And most of the time and I'm more the glass half full person. I'm kind of, trying to bring it up, or just listen. And one day it was like, oh my goodness, I feel like mud is oozing out of me right now. Like that's how much I was absorbing her emotions. And I said, I can't listen anymore. I can't listen anymore. And that's when she told me, I said, you have to stop. And she said, if I keep this in, it was just too much for her. And I didn't understand what that meant then. I didn't know as much about RSD and what kids can carry with them. But yeah, it can be hard for moms too. So it could make it so maybe you're not as able to support your child emotionally. But, just knowing that that's a risk is something to look for. But honestly, I think you're okay. I think you're doing amazing. I think you're probably doing way better than these people in the studies think. Okay, influence on child's treatments. Okay, so if a mom has ADHD, she might seek treatment for her child to see, does my child have ADHD? Does my child have difficulty? So if the mother has these symptoms and has become resilient, has learned methods throughout her life and is still learning how to handle what's going on in life, then there's a better chance that she has in helping the child manage their symptoms better, get the help that they need, which is a positive thing, huh? It's a positive thing. I'm going to see if I can pause this because I actually have to go, but I think there's a place to pause it. Pause. Okay, I am back. I went to lunch with my daughter. Hopefully it sounds the same, kind of looks the same, but I had to stop because I didn't finish in time. But back to what we were talking about. I know it didn't seem as long for you as it is for me, but I want to go back to the challenges. And the only things that I could think of, and it is when one of the topics that they studied is that when a mother has ADHD symptoms, sometimes that could be hard for the child, like losing things, maybe not keeping track of things. But also sometimes if you have ADHD, if you have a hard time waiting in line, or if you're impulsive when you have to wait, you might do things that your kids don't like, like not going to a store when they want to go to a store because it's crowded, not going somewhere. My kids used to want to go to Disneyland during the breaks or during the summer, and I only wanted to go when it was school. Like I'd rather take them out of school because I don't want to wait in lines. And one of my daughters didn't want to ever miss school. So she didn't go to, not that this super matters as far as parenting, but we didn't go. She was disappointed a lot that I wouldn't go with her because I refused to go when it was a more crowded time. I just could not do that. But I also had a hard time just staying put. So if we would go to Costco, really close, at least in the Costco's where they have the pizza on the inside instead of outside. Some of them have outside, like walk-up counter kind of things. But I had this strategy that I did for years with my older kids, and they didn't care. But my younger daughter, who has the RSD, who's more worried about what people think of her, when I would say, okay, you stand here in line, I'll go over and pick up the pizza and I'll come back and then go through the line. Or you go over, more likely I probably sent her to get the pizza and she wouldn't want to do that. She wouldn't multitask with me. And she also has a hard time of, if you do this with your ADHD, it makes me happy to do it, but it makes me nervous to just, kind of feel a little stressed just thinking about when I can't do it. With my other kids, if we sat down somewhere in a theater, the seats aren't assigned. If someone sat in front of me and they're too tall, I'd say, let's move, and we'd switch places. I'm fine moving 10 times to get the kind of seat that I want. My daughter doesn't like to do that. She doesn't want to draw attention to herself. So that was hard for her, maybe still is, that I will get up and move and say, let's do this. I'm not content. And she would even say to me before I knew I had ADHD, like, Mom, it's okay. It's okay. You can stay right here. And I thought, you don't know what it's like to be inside of me right now. I wasn't saying this to her, but it's not okay. I'm feeling crazy inside unless I can move over there, or the sound is bothering me. I need to move back there where it's not as loud. And if you're overstimulated or you have that need to sit where you can see just right and have the ability to do it, you might want to get up and move. So things like that, whatever your little things are that could bug your kids, or if you're a more chatty person and you go to church or you go to a school event and your child is ready to go home, maybe they're more of an introvert. They've been around people. They are ready to go home. You're more of the extrovert. You love to talk. You love to connect with people. And they're just saying, Mom, please stop talking. Please stop talking. Just please go home. So those things could be hard. But yeah, or having lots of ideas, or maybe having that optimistic, well, at least this, well, at least that. Sometimes that's nice for kids. Sometimes they just need to have you support them when they're not doing well without coming up with solutions and ideas and quick fixes and ways to solve it. It's just monitoring that. And there are really great things too. There are positive aspects of having ADHD with children. Spontaneity, if you have that, let's do this, let's do that. The creativity, thinking outside the box. Often those are our gifts. And when they can be great for our kids, or even having solutions that are inventive, that are optimistic. Those can be good for our kids. Also, just having a high energy. If you have the hyperactive part, you might have a high energy. You might be up singing and dancing with your kids. You might be jumping around. You might be doing silly things that maybe other parents or grandparents aren't doing. I'm a grandma, and one of the things that I do is, what do they call it? When I was growing up, we used to say to my uncle, let's do tricks, because it's like tricks not in a circus, like gymnastics, acrobats, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'll lay on the floor and have my grandchildren take turns. I used to do it with my kids too. Sitting on my feet or standing on my hands, or, kind of just doing kind of acrobat kind of things. Or having them stand up and be going like that. And, sometimes we act like they're the queen and they sit on top and put a crown on. But, just having a lot of energy, the ability to do stuff like that. Also, if you are really social and you're comfortable socially, it can be nice for children who aren't that way. Sometimes it can be a bit much, but it gives them someone to feel comfortable to be with, to latch onto, and feel like if people come over to talk, I know my mom will be able to talk to them. The pressure won't be on me to have something to say because my mom will have something to say. Adaptability, flexibility. Often ADHD parents thrive in environments where things change and you have to you get a little restless when it's just the same all the time. And we often thrive in environments where we have to adapt and make changes. And we can help teach our children that ability to do that, have some resilience or problem solving skills. And then also, a lot of times, adults with ADHD hyperfocus and go deep into the things that they're interested in and are really passionate about hobbies or have a lot of excitement for what they're learning and what they're doing. Sharing that with children is super, super amazing too. And then if you have experience with ADHD in yourself, you probably, especially if you've just, we're older, we're adults, we've had to be resilient. We've had to find ways to deal with the way our brains work, advocate for ourselves, and accept ourselves for being different, and recognize that we're not all the same. It might take some of us longer than others to realize, oh, I'm not the same as others, and this is why, and that's okay. And being able to understand that about yourself and pass that on to your kids is a gift to them, and it really is. Emotional sensitivity. I talked about the sensitivity as far as being able to understand what's going on with our kids. I've talked about the sensitivity about maybe absorbing emotions and having that be a bit much, but it can also lead to really deep conversations, deep connections, the ability to sense in your child when maybe things aren't going as well as what they're letting on, and just being able to help them through things like that. I guess more than anything is that if you have ADHD, and even if your child doesn't, you can recognize that not all of our brains work the same. And in your child or each of your children, not expect the same thing from each person, and look into who they truly are. Because even as women who have ADHD, even though we find so many things we have in common, we probably have a lot of things that are different too, where we say, oh, that's like that for you. It's not like that for me. My daughter-in-law and I talk about how ADHD manifests in us. And I was talking about picking up her kids from school last week, and that I'd rather go an hour early and sit still and then get through the line really fast when school got out, than get there and not be there as long, but go through the line slowly. And she said, oh, I do better with the slow line and I do better with the no line, like sit there and then just get out of there, but she has ADHD too. And we have a lot in common too. But yeah, we might look at schedules like, one mom might think this is the best to have a schedule, and another mom might think, no, I can't stick to a schedule. That might be hard for kids because kids thrive more when they're younger with some predictability, and health-wise, I think we all do we get up at this time, we go to bed at this time, if there's some normal flow to that. So, just looking at at whatever stage your child is in, if what works for you works for them or not, and just kind of tuning into that we might need different approaches, and that we might need to have more of a schedule, even if we don't like it, just to help our children, and maybe make some shifts with our kids that might not be what we do when we are single or do when we're older, but it can make it better for them, because there may be adjustments that we need to make when we recognize, oh, maybe my ADHD is getting in the way of doing what's best for my child, and just, kind of looking into that and recognizing how you might be able to help them more if your ADHD is not conducive to the best environment for them. Not saying that you don't have a good environment, but you know what I mean. I didn't realize, long ago when I had ADHD that I was more relaxed in my mind if I listened to something, if I listened to other people talk. It could be real people talking in a room. When I was younger, I loved to listen to adults talk. That was the pre-podcast days where my friends would be playing with each other, and I'd want to be in the living room listening to the adults talk. This is fascinating to me. I want to hear what they talk about. And that's what radio talk shows are like, or NPR, or whatever, podcasts, TV shows. Oh, I was thinking of Dr. Laura. I used to listen to her on the radio, or Oprah, any of those talk shows, Phil Donahue. I would have them on just to hear people talk, And it wasn't the thing like, oh, I can't just talk to children all the time. It just was relaxing my brain, in my opinion. And then what my son said, the doctor told him it's stimulating my brain so I can actually function. But that has been helpful to me, but it wasn't always helpful to my kids. And I used to listen to Dr. Laura all the time. And my daughter, who's now 30, said to me one day, who do you love? Who do you love more, me or Dr. Laura? Like, I'm trying to talk to you, Mom. And that might sound harsh. It was just her. She was only probably 4 or 5. And I thought, oh, I can see that you're feeling like you can't talk to me because I'm listening to her, who's not even a person in my life. It's just relaxing me so I can clean the kitchen, or it's entertaining me or something. So whatever method you have, just see what might be the best for your kids. Even now when I'm listening to shows and I have my earbuds in, if my older kids are home, with my grandchildren are home, I just don't do it because I want to tune into them more. And I do miss it because I'm not able to keep up with things as much because I can't function as well without that. But I do love being with them. But when my older kids are at home, I'll say things to them like, do you need me to talk to you right now? I don't want to ignore you, but let me know, like tap me on the shoulder, because I want to keep going. I want to be able to function as a mom. I want to function in the house or what I need to do, but I also want to be present if I need to be present for them. But yeah. And then also your impulsive things, like shopping, food, the things that you need to buy for your kids. Are you buying too much? Is it making it harder for them if they have too much clutter? I used to think, maybe everybody went through a phase of, I need more. But I think, oh, My Little Ponies, like those are on sale or whatever, or these clothes, they're on sale, the on sale thing, I'll buy more of these. My kids will love having more Beanie Babies or whatever. It's not like I always bought them toys, but, like at Christmas time, I might go a little overboard. Yeah. And then you start to realize, just like in your own closet, do you have enough room for this? Do they have enough room for that? I used to think if you have enough containers for it, then you have enough room for it. But really, who needs a bunch of little plastic drawers with lots of things to go through and keep track of? It's not always the best for your kids to have more. So just evaluating that for your children too. Any of the decisions that you make, how they affect you, how they affect your children, and not feeling awful about it because we're all learning as we go. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being patient for me as I'm working out this video podcasting thing. I hope it works. Like I said, the only way to test it out is to do it. And I could make multiple tests of short ones, but I think I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you. And my accountability group. It's like, the brain, like what was on my brain and it just left and now it's back. But I'm starting accountability groups. We'll see how long I go. But my intention, my idea is to have it ongoing. Right now they're free. Someday it might cost money if it keeps costing me more money to manage these things. But right now I'm doing a free accountability group for March on exercise, fitness, whatever your fitness goals are at the beginning of the week. Let me know what that is. Write it down in an email or a note to me. You can write it through the contact form on my website, renee-allen.com, or if you get emails from me already, if you're on my newsletter, you can reply to any of my newsletters. But I will have some specifically if you're already in the accountability group, you'll already be emailing me that way. But you'll let me know what your goal is for each week, and then we'll do a few check-ins to see how you're doing. Eventually, I might make some WhatsApp groups to connect us more, but right now that's how it is. It's just having someone that you're accountable to because it is super, super helpful. When I want to remember to do something, and if I'm prioritizing getting something done, the two things that help the most, and they're super helpful when you have ADHD too, when your brain forgets, is when I've committed to someone, and it's not like I always remember because I've committed, but once I do remember, that'll keep coming up each day. Like, you haven't done that yet. You told this person you're going to do it, and you find a way to do it. The other thing is that habit stacking, is that when you do something, like when I go teach my Monday morning class, on the way home, I stop and pick up eggs from our neighbor who sells us eggs. Well, yesterday I had to go to the dentist after my class, so I wasn't going home the same way. I went to the dentist, and I told myself on the way back from the dentist, get the eggs. I didn't remember because that's not my normal habit. It wasn't a habit stack. It wasn't a this and that. But if I'd driven home the same way, I would have done it. And today I thought, oh no, I didn't do that. and I thought, yeah, that confirms what happens so much. If you always brush your teeth right after you put on your pajamas or something, when you put on your pajamas, you'll think, oh, it's time to brush my teeth. You'll have the this then that in your brain. But if you're trying to develop a new habit and you don't have that yet, having accountability, especially if it's a habit that is just something you haven't been able to commit to for a long time, having accountability is super helpful. So I'm happy to have that with you. So thanks so much for being here. I'll be back again. Bye.
Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause, no time for a pause. Rewind, I've run out of time to sing melodies and harmonies. I'm cut short, the silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.